This is the Marriage Podcast, and I'm your host, Alexandra Stockwell. I'm a physician turned relationship and intimacy expert, and I specialize in showing couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships. I myself have been married for 25 years. My husband and I have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing relationship. If you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place because I will show you how. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, this is Alexandra, and I am really excited to bring this episode to you because during this episode, I'm going to be coaching Melanie. I've wanted to coach people and share with you what that experience is like because I think for anyone who's never had relationship coaching, it's hard to imagine. And honestly, for most people who have, it's still hard to imagine what it's like to be my client. And so I'm really happy to share that with you. And I'm aided in doing so by Melanie. So let me tell you a little bit about her before we dive into the coaching. She lives in Italy with her boyfriend, Alistair. You live together, right?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. And Melanie and I met at a training in Chicago in 2013. And we've been in touch on Facebook. I occasionally see and comment on what she posts. She occasionally sees and comments on what I post, but we're not really current in one another's lives beyond what social media reveals. And when we met in 2013, we had a deep, authentic connection while we were in the training. And otherwise, this is basically a new relationship, and it's certainly a new coaching relationship. So I want you to know all that because you'll hear that we have a rapport that is just instantly present, even though we're about to have a coaching session and it's the first one. And Melanie is not a client of mine other than for this conversation. So having disposed with those important details for the context, let's dive in. Melanie, I know you and Alistair live in Italy and you've been together how long?
5 years. When I say we live together, we have separate flats, but we spend every night together over one another. So I cast that as living together.
Okay. And why don't you live in one home?
We have for a while. Previously in England, I lived with him. But then for a while, but that was while I was sort of almost homeless. I had been living in a home, but then I needed to move out of that to move. We've both been a bit wary about living together fully because we've both had several previous long-term relationships that haven't worked out. Otherwise, we wouldn't be together. So it's like we're very, very slow about we don't want to do the thing just because it's what's expected of us in a relationship. So I lived with him because I needed a home and it was convenient for that time. But then when I moved out, we sort of found that it worked better for us not to be able to have that space if we needed to like, okay, we're not going to see each other tonight, but generally we do spend each night with each other. It depends on what.
Okay, well, I personally think that there are all kinds of ways of having good, beautiful relationships. And hearing you speak, I'm reminded of Katharine Hepburn, who used to say that the ideal thing would be to be married to the man who lives next door, because then you have lots of contact, but he can clean up after himself and get his own breakfast, and she could do the same for herself. But what I'm trying to get at with these questions is, does the fact that you don't have one address reflect hesitancy to commit or not necessarily?
A tiny bit. that we do have a very deeply committed relationship, but I think there's that level of it keeps us safe. For a while when we moved, and we did get 2 separate places, and then I wanted him to move in for a while, but then once I got in and got myself settled in my place, then I was like, he wanted me to have that, but then when I had that, I didn't want him to move into it because he thought it would give me the space and I would find my space, and then at some point he would move in. But when he gave me that, I was like, I don't know if I want your stuff in my house now, in my flat, in my apartment now. So
Okay.
it's like,
I get it. There's a little something there, but that is not actually our focus.
no.
So,
do
you want to say? Yeah, go ahead.
We have we do. It's one of the first adult relationship that I've ever felt like I've ever had. And, I'm approaching 50. We've been together 5 years, and it's the first time that I've felt like I've had a really adult relationship where I know he's very open and upfront with me, and I can be open and upfront with him, and we have like an adult discussion about when conflict comes up generally. So it feels,
Okay, so
we understand there is sometimes reticency because of past fears, but we're sort of very understanding of where each other have been, and we have the issue.
Okay, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is that your definition of an adult relationship is that you're able to handle yourselves maturely around disagreements and conflict. Is that right?
Yes, that's definitely something that hasn't been there in the past, and is definitely was very important for me before I got into another relationship, that was going to be part of the relationship. So I've certainly found that with Alistair.
Will you give an example of a conflict or something that was brewing that you both navigated in a way that was mature and you feel good about it?
I can't think of the specifics, but I can have quite negative self-talk, and sometimes he'll say something to me that my brain automatically assumes is negative or something, and I feel so able to go and speak to him and say to him, this is what I heard from what you're saying. Is that what you meant? And then we'll have a discussion about whether that was what he meant or whether it wasn't what he meant, and then and things like that. And
I love that. There's a whole fancy term for that, reality check.
Yes, I need that.
I think relationships would benefit tremendously if we all did a lot more reality checking.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I have learned, and that I definitely need, because my mind can play so many tricks on me about what other people mean. So having that ability to go to him, and it doesn't, I think in the past I might have asked somebody that and they would have got frustrated with me, like, of course I don't mean that, but he understands my history, and therefore he's like, okay, I'll support you and in that place, and like we'll have a discussion about what I meant by that, and we'll work it through.
Okay, so that tells me about a beautifully deep level of trust also.
Yeah. Accepting the issue that I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, so let's get into that.
Tension there.
Okay, so will you, just because this is a coaching session that's being recorded, will you share in your own words, what do you desire to have as the outcome of this conversation? What is the issue, or what result would have you feel really satisfied?
Well, the challenges we're having at the moment is that obviously when you get into a relationship, you're very passionate, there's lots of sex, and we were very, very active, and I have a very high sex drive, and even before the current sort of COVID challenges that we're going through, that our sex life had started to diminish and we weren't having it as much. And so I think for me, it's like I'm always very much about controlling myself and what I can control. So we have had a discussion, and he partly feels like it's his age, and he is open. He has been trying to be more just sort of touchy-feely in general, rather than having, because it's not for me necessarily about full penetrative sex. It's about, we've got into a bit of a rut, really, that we just sort of finish our work, come home, sit down, eat dinner, stick telly on, and we're sort of disconnected. So it's very much for me about having a bit more connection, and sort of even just like the other day, he was just stroking my arm and talking to me, and that was very lovely. So we have sort of tried a few things, but in the past I end up getting really resentful at him because I really want to have full, more sex. Actually, I mean, sex or whatever, some sort of sexual contact. And it's not just with him, because it was in my marriage as well, so I know it's with me. I feel like I ask for it, and then I get turned down because they're just not in the mood, and then it deflates me. I go sort of sink in. It's like, oh, I'm too much. So coming out of it the other end, where I can feel like I can ask for what I want, and I don't get deflected, get knocked down when I get rejected, and because I then try and shut my sex off and try and shut it down, and I don't want to do that, because I feel like, one, that's sort of half the problem, is because then I keep shutting it down, and that's not really going to help our sex life if I shut down. So being able to like not feel like I'm too much, and be able to like maintain like the deeply sexy woman that I am in the face of whatever comes at me, is basically.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I love that desire. And I'd like to start by asking, if he's not interested, and you definitely are interested in having sex or being sexual together, what does that mean to you?
What does that, I suppose,
in other words, does it mean that he's becoming an old man? That's sort of his line.
Yeah.
Is it that, do you feel you're not as attractive anymore? Does it mean that it's the beginning of the end of the relationship? I don't mean to put anything in your head, but
I think it's
usually we interpret
I'm not
this
sexy enough anymore.
that you're not sexy enough.
He tells me that's not true, and I know him to be like, if it was that, he would tell me. If he didn't think I was sexy anymore, then he would say, I'm sorry, I just don't find you as attractive as I did before. And he's like, no, he's very much it's the dipping of libido is something that's going on for him, and not.
Okay, so that's how you feel. He says that's not it, and you believe him. Then where does that leave you?
I do on one hand, but there's still part of me that's I believe that he still finds me as sexy, but I think it taps into my sexual desire is too much.
Okay.
My desire.
So either way, your conclusion about his lack of interest in having sex as often as you would enjoy, either way, your conclusion is that there's something wrong with you. Yes. Either you're too much and your desire is big, or you're not attractive enough, but the whole thing ends up with you feeling like there's something wrong with you.
Yes.
Okay. Well, when I put it that way, does that feel true? How do you feel about that? Is that what you want to believe? Let's do a reality check.
When I look at it with logically and completely sort of that setback, then no. But it's such a visceral, like, automatic response in me. Like, and you obviously need to start trying to catch it, and then doing that reality check with myself. Like, is this true? Because it's like, it's just in my gut. Like, when he says no, it's like just in my gut, it's like, oh. But yeah, logically, my brain says it is nothing to do with me. I haven't changed in that regard.
Okay, well, I wouldn't go so far as to say it has nothing to do with you either, because this is the whole thing about sex and intimacy, is that it involves both of you, and there's a way in which it's about each of you, and then it's about the two of you together. So I don't want to go all the way to the other side and be like, well, it's all his issue and has nothing to do with you, because that is not true.
It has less to do with me than I'm making out to be them. We'll say that.
Well, actually, perhaps it has something to do with you, but not the negative, self-deprecating things you're concluding.
Yeah.
That's what I want to uncover. And I know that you basically have, well, your big desire is to be able to enjoy having a lot more sex with ease. But the next goal is to be able to discuss it with Alistair in a way that is straightforward. So I want to be very clear that the preparation for having, or the necessary ingredients for having a meaningful, productive conversation with him includes you owning the piece of it, which is only up to you to change. And having the whole thing mean something negative about you is in that category.
Yeah.
I want to come in from the back door, because you said this is the same thing that happened in your marriage. And I'm wondering, how is the situation with Alistair similar, and how is it different from whatever you experienced with your ex-husband?
I trust Alistair a lot more than my ex-husband. So I trust him.
You trust him to be honest?
Trust him to be honest about what's going on. I think it's just the same from my side. Is that the negative talk? That's the similarity. It's my reaction to that. I thought it was because I thought it was it's exactly the same negative negative opinion of myself based on what was happening.
And was this challenge in your marriage a major factor in your getting divorced?
No, the lack of honesty was.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Well, I'll just be very direct that there's a way in which it sounds like, of course, with your logical brain and your glorious, mature, sexy woman, you know when Alistair isn't interested in sex, that it's a completely different relationship, a different dynamic, and a much more affirming context than when this happened with your ex-husband. However, there's a part of you that isn't really distinguishing the two situations.
No.
In how you spoke about it earlier, you said, and then they say, or something like that. You referred to they because it's like the primal, more unconscious part of your brain is lumping the two of them together. And so one of the things that's super important is to decouple your experience that you had with your ex-husband and that you're having with Alistair. What do you hear when I say that?
Yeah, I see how it's like all men are. It's that sort of just jumbling everything in together, and then it's sort of, you can't really look at the root cause or the issues within that one relationship, because you're looking at sort of, it's too general, rather than you can't, if you're dealing with several relationships rather than dealing with specifically.
Yeah. At its core, in this context, I would say it's disconnecting, because what you want is to be connected with Alistair, who's a particular, specific individual. But if you respond to him in a way that is generic, then that's less connection. There's no way for him to feel seen if you're responding to the archetype of men who say no when you want sex.
Yeah. I do have a bit of a story. Like, I think I've had it for quite a few years. Like, there isn't a man born that can keep up with my sex drive, sort of thing, because I've always seemed to have had a higher sex drive. So it's almost like I'm projecting that onto him. It's like, well, you were like, I never believed you were going to be able to keep up with me anyway.
Okay, so let's take a moment, and you might even want to close your eyes. That's up to you. And imagine that there is a man who totally keeps up with your sex drive. Like, give yourself permission to feel what that would be. Do you have access to that feeling?
Nope. It just seems like if anything, I go into more the other way, that it's someone who has a higher sex drive than me, then I'm in that position of feeling like, give me some space. That's where I sort of went to, rather than finding this happy medium. It felt like I went into a...
Have you had that experience of being with a partner whose sex drive is way beyond yours and it's suffocating?
Not really a relationship, because I've only ever had like proper long-term relationships have been with my ex-husband and Alistair, that have been more than a year. Most before my husband, all my relationships were only a few months.
Okay.
And the one before him was...
Okay, well,
there have been times where I haven't wanted to have sex, where I've been sort of seeing somebody and I haven't necessarily wanted to have sex, and I felt that they were pressuring me. So
okay, I understand. So let's go back again to closing your eyes and take a breath and see if anywhere within you, maybe there's a glimmer of what it would feel like to basically have matched libidos with your partner. Like, give yourself permission to receive how that would be. Any glimmer anywhere of that okay, good. Where is that? How does that feel?
in my body, it feels like it's in my stomach. I just feel like it's expansion, and it does feel, and like I felt my shoulders relax, because I just felt like I do carry a lot of sort of that tension around, because I feel like I want more sex, and so I did feel like my shoulders relaxed a lot, and I just felt more relaxed in my body. And actually, what I was visualizing was my partner, and it wasn't we were having sex. It was more just playful banter, rather than any sort of actual sexual act. It was just like more flirtiness. I think that is...
Yeah, it almost sounds like more erotic energy.
Yeah, I think that for me, it is very... we have sex, and then it's like a switch. It gets turned on. We have sex, and then it's turned off again. And I like more... I'm a very playful woman, and I feel like...
Yes.
We have been a little bit the last couple of days. There has been a bit more playfulness. Like, I was taking a mick out of him about because he is... I don't know if you have it in the US. It's called Saga. It's a company called Saga, and they only do stuff for over 50s, and he's approaching that. So I was taking the mick out of him, and I didn't say it, and he was like, "Don't say it. I know what you're going to say." And it was just like, and it was just sort of it was very jokey and very sort of a bit flirty. And I think when we first got together, it was that we were very flirty. Like we would go to the cinema and then or to for a meal, and would like stand by the car and just kiss for like we'd end up there for an hour after we were supposed to be leaving, because we would just be kissing and stuff like that. And we've sort of become a bit sort of housewife, house husband, and we've lost that bit, and we just then have we just have the sex when we have the sex, and it's like I want the rest back.
Okay, well, actually, I'm hearing something, and I want to ask if it's true.
Yeah.
If this matches. Initially, you had said that you want more sex, and I understand having that would be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the even deeper desire is to have more connection.
Yes.
And that connection comes in the form of sex, but also flirtation and playfulness and just gay repartee and banter back and forth. And that's a really important awareness.
Mm.
So the first thing is to, like, I want to give you an assignment, if you will, to at least once every day, and ideally more often, really, you may close your eyes or not, but tap into what that feels like to get what you want.
Mm.
Because if it's available and in your body and in your unconscious mind, you believe you can't have it, you won't receive it, even if it's available.
Yeah.
So tapping into that feeling is going to open you to be able to receive it when it is available, and just make it more likely to be co-created with him.
Mm.
How does that sound to you?
Yeah, it feels good. It feels like just I've got stuck down this lane of just going, that's not there, that's not there, that's not there. Whereas, so I've got like, again, that's that heavy, and sort of my shoulders are going sort of not down in a relaxed way, but sort of tensed way again. Whereas thinking about, yeah, it's possible, just makes me feel like my shoulders feel open and everything just feel really much lighter. And in a way, I feel like I can evoke that from him just because I feel lighter. So I'm not looking at him going, why are you so boring? Or whatever, or why aren't you flirting with me? But then I'm not really sending out the energy to come flirt with me, because I'm being angry and resentful about him not flirting with me, which who would flirt with somebody who was like, it's not really.
Exactly. And not only can you evoke the flirty energy, if it comes, you won't be blocking it.
Mm. So, yeah. So, yeah, I knew that. I just got stuck in my little rut. I want to feel resentful and angry that I'm not getting enough sex.
Well, you always can. You can always take this feeling and get rid of it.
Mm.
Like, you have choice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so although I want to say, again, because we're recording this, I'm assuming you're saying you want to feel resentful and blame it on him is a joke, or is that actually true?
No, it's jokey.
Okay.
Yeah, no. It's like I feel turned on about being angry and resentful. Yeah, I feel like excited about. I like it when like things flip like that. It's like it felt again. It's like that squishing, that horrid, angry, resentful squishing me down, and now it's sort of popped, and I just feel like, it's funny. Like, oh yeah, I can be angry and resentful. La la la.
It's amazing, Melanie. There's more light coming out of your eyes. Your gestures are more fluid and more generous.
Mm-hmm.
Like, communicating with you feels like a very different experience right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to reflect that this change, I can feel the difference.
Yeah, I can feel it too.
What does it feel like?
And I've known that as like, this is the woman that he met and the one that he was responding to. And that's why I sort of have blamed myself. It's like, because you've stopped being that sort of exciting, energetic, dynamic woman that you were when you were with him at the beginning, and that is having an impact on what's going on in our relationship. Which is why when you offered me the coaching, I was like, I know she'll zap, give me a bit of a zap to.
Okay, so let's talk about how this works in practice. Because I know you have this now, and that's great.
Yeah.
But the point is to have this be sprinkled in and seasoning your everyday life.
Yeah.
And it would be common that you go to work and, well, you've described, when you come home from work, do you feel worn out?
Not really. I work from home, so.
Oh, okay. There we go. But
no.
At the end of your work day, what is your energy level?
Mine's normally pretty good, because if I feel tired during the day, I work for myself. So if I feel like I need a rest during the day, I'll take a rest.
Okay, this is so great. I'm so happy for you. That's beautiful. May we all aspire to such circumstances. Yes. So then what I'm getting at is I'm looking for what are the contexts that are likely to diminish this juicy, receptive, flirtatious energy in you. Are you aware of what? Did it just gradually dip down over time, or are there particular contexts that kind of squash it down?
Alistair is quite misanthropic. That is his whole thing about his. So I think it's trying to find that. I usually end up going down to him. So which sort of.
You mean so you calibrate to his energy?
Yeah.
Instead of staying in your joyful radiance.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's usually
What?
He often feels quite drained from his job because it is quite heavy, much more heavy duty. So he comes in feeling quite meh, and then I instead of bringing him up, I just sort of.
You join him there.
I join him.
Okay, there. This is so funny because you're so hungry for connection that you join him in his state in order to feel more connected, but actually it's unsatisfying. Yes. I want to share with you, when my husband and I first were married, and his bandwidth and presence has expanded tremendously, but then he would come home kind of worn out and not available for the kind of connection that I definitely wanted to have. And what we did in those early years, I actually suggested it. I couldn't believe I did because I knew it'd be hard for me, but it wasn't that hard, is he would come in, and as soon as he came in, I would look at the clock and I just wouldn't speak with him for 30 minutes because he needed that transition time. He might take a bath, he might, whatever he was going to do, so that he had the space to revive and rejuvenate. And then he was available to interact in the way that I wanted. Do you think something like that might be helpful?
I'm not sure, because he finishes work, because he's working from home as well at the moment. So he finishes work and then he does have some time to himself, and then he comes over mine later, and he still comes over feeling quite meh.
Okay, so do you know what he does during that time between work and when he gets to your place?
He will sometimes have a bath. He also does a radio show twice a week. So he's preparing for that, and he speaks to his mum to make sure she's okay, and he does various little bits.
Okay, well, I think, as it turns out, he can listen to this conversation. That's not the usual situation when I'm coaching, but I'd like to help you find a way to ask him to handle himself in a way that is still completely accepting of who he is, not asking him to change who he is, but also in a generous way, letting him know the impact.
Mm.
And it's a very fine line, because it doesn't make sense to have the goal of changing who he is. That is not what I'm saying.
No.
But this is not about who he is. It's about choices he's making, and he may not be aware of alternatives.
This is one of the other things that I've been thinking of doing, is like, sometimes he does come and he is going, oh, this is a problem, blah blah blah, and then I will try and go into, I'm a very solution focused sort of person.
Yes.
So I I try and have a bit of listen to him, but then I'm like, well, how can try and open it up? How can you have this be different for yourself? And he's like, oh no, there isn't. He's very much, there isn't a way to change. And so I make some suggestions of what I think he could try, and then he will just bring up another problem in. So what I'm trying at the moment is just to be with him, and not to collude, and not to sort of go, oh yes, but also not to offer solutions, because it doesn't work. And
Okay, you're right. So colluding or joining him in his frustration isn't going to help him.
No.
Problem solving, especially unsolicited, is not going to help him. What is the way of being that's going to work for both you and him in your relationship?
So I'm just going to try and just listen, and just sit because my reaction is to try and problem solve, is to like just hold that. That's my issue. That that's not what he's asking for me. So that's sort of just be there for him more and listen.
Okay. Well, I suggest that when he starts sharing his troubles in this way, his frustrations, that you bring your attention back inside your own body and soul and tap into the feeling of what's possible in the way you just did a short while ago. In other words, rather than have what you do be so oriented to what's going to work for him, that you shift into what would be delightful for you to be experiencing while you're present and supportive and listening to this man. Because one of the through lines in this conversation is, when things are going well, it feels very much like an us. And when things are not going well, or there's some kind of difference, then it's either how it works for him or how it works for you. I mean, this is a common phenomenon that when things are harmonious and good, you feel on the same team. When there's conflict, it can feel you versus him. But it's not just you versus him. It's that either he gets his needs met or you get your needs met. When there's a difference of opinion. Does that resonate for you?
Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting is, when your attention is in different places, or your focus, or there's a difference in opinion, and I'm including the kind of conversation at the end of the workday when he's feeling kind of frustrated and overwhelmed and fed up, or whatever it is, that rather than feeling like, oh, either the conversation is delicious and flirtatious and spontaneous because it's how you want it to be and what you're available for, or the conversation is more steady and really giving full attention to what's in his mind that you look for the both and, not asking him to pop out of his mood, because that's his process, but not also being willing to pop out of your mood. Can you imagine listening in your delicious womanhood, even when he's sort of complaining?
I have like the tip of what it could be like. I think I can widen it as I start playing with it in the moment. I sort of have like a glimpse of, yes, that is possible.
Okay,
with more experience, I'm winding it.
My wish for you is that you look forward to the next time he's complaining and frustrated, because it gives you an opportunity to play and expand your womanliness.
Yeah, I like that very much. That is
rather than
one of my goals in life, is to sort of, what doesn't matter what the situation is, that I am so see that in nearly every single situation, never be an absolute, but that I can maintain my internal sparkle, because I can get knocked. I get knocked off quite easily sometimes. So it's being able to. This is like a proving ground for me, because he. It's going to be like a dojo, because it's really.
Okay, perfect. So definitely, like, there are 3 phases we're talking about, and be kind and compassionate to yourself, because some will be easier and some will be more challenging, and you can absolutely do all 3. So the first is just on your own. When you're getting up in the morning and getting dressed, well, I don't know if he's there, but I'm trying to point to a time when you're by yourself, that you make a point of tapping into this delicious, expansive, receptive, flirtatious feeling, and make that a standard place that you bring your attention and connect with that feeling when you're alone. There's no pressure from anywhere else. That's one scenario. Then the other is to really tap into that when things are quite pleasant between the two of you. When you're having dinner, when you're, whatever, you're taking a walk, that you let that energy flow rather than saving it for sex. And then the third scenario is to tap into that feeling while he's being kind of a downer about his day. And that is actually the more subtle context, because we're not talking about his saying, oh, there are all these problems at work. And you're like, oh, wow. You want it to be discreet, energetically potent, but discreet, so that to him, it just feels like you're present with him. But you're present, and rather than being swallowed by the feeling of being negative, instead you're really buoying yourself and fueling the experience with this delicious energy.
Yes.
Will you say those 3 scenarios in your own words as a way to really anchor it?
So when I'm spending time of my own, to sort of be playful and joyful in my own energy, and just anchor it into my feeling sense in my body, in that scenario. So it's just, my brain was like neural pathways, putting it in my neural pathway. So that's how I start to feel that way, and then sort of gradually introducing it with him when he's in a more joyful mood, so I can then sort of train my brain and train my body to feel that way when he's in a good mood, so I can then have more stamina and more resilience to try to feel I can know that feeling in my body, and therefore I can still feel it even when he is feeling a bit down and not matching that energy. So I can feel him without it affecting my own energy.
Fantastic. So we started with the question of how to have more sex, bring more playful energy. Where are you feeling in regard to all of that right now?
I'm feeling very, very good. I feel like it's in my control again, whereas at the beginning I was feeling like it was, at least in, both of our, partly I was putting it onto him. Partly it was like, well, I can only do it if he cooperates, and now it feels like it's my choice whether I choose to turn up in the world and show up as a bright, dynamic, energetic woman, and then I get to choose how I want to play in my relationship with my partner. So yeah.
Okay, beautiful.
Achieved.
It feels delicious, and I'm aware that there's one piece we didn't discuss, which is how you talk with him about it. But I think it's much more important that you make these energetic shifts, because then what you would say to him is going to be different. Both how you say it and what you want to communicate is going to be completely different when it's coming from this new internal state for you. And after you've made the changes that we're talking about and tapped into the deliciousness that is Melanie, and really let that ooze out of you all the time, if you want, let's just say in a few weeks, we can do another session on how you speak with him about it. If that's even necessary or a challenge at that point, it might not be.
Yeah. I just have this feeling like it won't be, because it will either not be necessary at all because
everything has changed.
Because everything has changed in our relationship, but ultimately I'm fulfilling that need in me, which is to be a playful person. I think that's a lot of it. It's like, me, sex is a very playful, and because there can be the build up to it, and this is like just having the build up at my disposal all the time. Like I can be in that sort of frame of mind when I choose to be, and it's not actually necessary for him to even be in that frame of mind at all. he can choose to join me if he wishes to, and then I'm just can be.
And chances are he will, because it's so irresistible.
Yeah. This is definitely how much I was more like this at the beginning of our relationship when we were having more sex. So I think this is going to be a game changer for our sex lives anyway.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Marriage Podcast. Please rate and review the show on iTunes. It really makes a difference. And if you have a question or a comment, reach out to me via my website at alexandrastockwell.com.